This is our introduction of equations with multiplication and division. Remembering again, the inverse of multiplication is division, and the inverse of division is multiplication. But we're going to be taking a look at a shortcut when we have a multiplication equation with fractions. Now, if you remember in the other section, when we were adding and subtracting with the inverses became 0. We had those 0 pairs. In this case, they don't become 0. They become 1. So let's just take a look at -4 equals x divided by 5. So I'm going to go ahead and put those bars there. X divided by 5 is a division problem. We want to solve it by multiplying. So I'm going to use the big parentheses to mean multiplication. It's just easier than using the time sign, the x sign. The dot's okay, but this just keeps everything in order for me. So we are going to multiply both sides by 5. If you want, you can even put it over 1, just so you can see that we are multiplying these two fractions. So if you think about it, you can just multiply across. You get 5x divided by 5. But what happens here? These cancel out. And 5 divided by 5 gives you that 1x. It's not a 0x, because that would just be 0. It's 1x. And 5 times -4 is -20. And -20 is your answer for x. Down below, we have m divided by 3 is 1.5. Division problem, solved by multiplying. Multiply both sides by 3. And you notice I'm keeping this up here in the numerator because I really want you to see that 3 will cancel out and you end up with the 1m. 1.5 times 3. Well, I don't remember what that is. 5 times 3 is 15. 4.5. So m is 4.5. Over here we have some multiplication problems. So this one at the top is 7x equals 56. It's a multiplication problem. We're going to solve it by dividing. I use the fraction bar instead of this division sign because it's just going to make things easier down the road. 7 divided by 7. These cancel out because 7 divided by 7 is 1. 1x equals 8. X equals 8. Sometimes we might have a decimal or a fraction. It's improper. It's okay. 13 equals -2x. You're going to divide both sides by -2. X equals -6.5 or -13/2. That's okay as well. Now here's where we are going to look at some shortcuts. So 2/3 x equals 12. Technically, this is a multiplication problem solved by division. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to solve it by dividing over here. Dividing by 2/3. And this is where we run into problems. We'll get people who will say 12 divided by 2 is 6. They'll say 6/3 or 2 is the answer. What you have to really think of is that this is x equals 12 divided by 2/3. And if you remember your division rules, it's 12 times 3/2. We multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. We're simply flipping the denominator and the numerator. They're changing their places. So down here we end up having x equals 18. 36 divided by 2 is 18. But what I'm going to show you over on this side is a little bit of a shortcut. So going back to the original problem, instead of saying this is a multiplication problem solved by division, all I'm going to do is multiply by the reciprocal, which means I'm going to multiply this by 3/2 and this by 3/2. I'm basically going all the way down to this step. And then go ahead and see what happens here. 3 divided by 3 is 1, 2 divided by 2 is 2. If the cross-canceling is hard, 3 times 2 is 6, 2 times 3 is 6, which gives you 1x. 36 over 2x is 18. So this is the best way to do it. It's going to be easier, it's going to be clearer to see. If you go back and try and do it with the division, it's just going to run into a lot of problems and it's some extra steps, but it's your choice. So let's look at some practice problems. Negative 1/4 equals negative 1/5 x. You can go ahead and pause it. You can try and solve it. Try solving it both ways. I'm going to do the shortcut. Here goes. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. 5s and 5s cancel. 1 and 1 cancels. You're left with 1x equals. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. 1 times 4 is 4. X equals negative 5/4. This is fine. If you want to put negative 1 and 1/4, you can, but this is fine. Down here we have 1/6 times W equals 102. Once again, I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. These cancel out. W equals 102 times 6, 612. And lastly, we have 4x divided by 6 equals 2/3. 4x divided by 6, you can look at this two ways. You can multiply by 6 and then divide by 4, or you can do it all at once. This ends up being, if you multiply it across, it's just 24 over 24, which is 1x. 2 times 6 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12. Looks like x equals 1. Just a couple things to go over before we move on. 2/3 times x is basically the same thing as 2/3 times x over 1, which is 2x over 3. So you might see it this way, but you might see it this way. 1/4 x is the same as 1/4 times x over 1, which is x divided by 4. Same thing. Negative 2/5 x is negative 2/5 times x over 1. You might see it like this, but you could also see it like that. They're both the same. As long as the negative is only in one spot, this is not correct, because the double negatives would make it the end result a positive. Your practice tonight, I want you to do these 3 problems from page 87, numbers 1, 7, and 13.